He's coming to the ceremony. As a friend. That's what she said while slicing into her salmon like she was telling me the weather forecast. Mallory had this way of dropping emotional hand grenades with a smile on her face, fork in hand, eyes daring you to react so she could accuse you of being insecure. I didn't flinch, not externally. Inside, something cracked, a small, precise fracture. Her ex, Greg, the guy who once drunk texted her, "You were the best thing I ever lost," at 2 a.m., 5 years after they broke up. She'd shown it to me once, laughing. Look how pathetic he is. Now, apparently, that same pathetic ex was wedding guest material. "We're adults," she said. "Don't be jealous." I smiled, a real tight one. Of course. If you've ever been in a moment where your gut is screaming but your face is playing house, you know exactly what that smile costs. Mallory went back to planning flower arrangements like she hadn't just spit in the cake batter. Meanwhile, my mind was elsewhere, not panicking, calculating, because if he was invited, if she needed him there, then the truth wasn't something she was afraid of. That meant she thought she was smarter than me. And I love when people think that. Later that night, while she was in the bath humming Lana Del Rey, I looked him up. Greg still had the same annoying middle part in his hair, worked in sales, 2 kids, married to a woman named Jennifer. The next morning, I drove to the stationery store, got one of those expensive, creamy wedding invites Mallory had insisted on, engraved, formal, and I wrote a little handwritten note on the back. In case Greg forgot to mention, would be lovely to see you both there. I even sealed it with a wax stamp. Mallory loved that detail. You'd be amazed how far a little etiquette can go in delivering chaos. Look, I know most people just scroll these posts or read them half awake while pretending to work, but if you're one of the 90% who's not following, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button. It takes a second, and it helps the team behind this keep delivering these stories with the grit and polish they deserve. Seriously, thanks. Back to Mallory. She was glowing for the next few days, watching RSVP cards roll in like dopamine hits. Then she opened one and her whole face shifted. "Greg and Jennifer?" she read, voice flat, like someone just said roach in a fine dining restaurant. I was sipping coffee. I shrugged. "You said invite him. I assumed he'd bring his wife." There was a pause, a flash of something in her eyes, then that forced a smile again. "Right, of course." Later that evening, I noticed her setting her phone face down more often. Not outright hiding, just, adjusting. And when I offered to help finalize the seating chart, she got twitchy. "I already have it figured out. Don't mess with it." But I did mess with it. Quietly. Moved Greg and Jennifer 2 rows closer to the head table. She never asked how I knew the password to her digital planner. She never thought I'd care enough to dig. But when you're marrying someone, you tend to notice the cracks in their voice when they mention certain names. And when your bride-to-be stares at one RSVP like it's a court summons, you learn to listen to the silence between her words. I didn't accuse her of anything. I didn't rant or spiral. That's what she was waiting for. Some emotional outburst she could turn into my insecurity. Instead, I made notes, like how her voice always dropped when she talked about the old days, or how she'd laugh too hard at texts, then pretend it was a meme, or how she started saying, "I just need some air" more often. She thought she was threading the needle, a harmless nostalgia visit from a friend. But some threads, when pulled, unravel the whole dress. She invited him to our future. I invited his past, and Jennifer was more than willing to RSVP. Mallory had this little victory dance she did with the RSVP cards, spinning them around the dining table like they were love letters from royalty. "Another yes," she'd squeal, waving them like a child showing off a birthday invite. She had no idea which card would gut her mood like a fish. When she opened the one from Greg and Jennifer, I wasn't even pretending to care anymore. Just sipping tea, flipping through my phone, waiting. Her fingers stopped, eyes narrowed. "Greg and Jennifer?" She said it like someone reading off a police report, like Thean was the problem. I didn't look up. "You said invite him." I did. +1. There was a pause, one breath longer than polite. Then she gave me that tight hostess smile. "Right, of course." She spent the rest of the evening in a weird, robotic haze, pouring too much wine into her glass, laughing a beat too late. saying she was just tired while typing furiously into her phone like it owed her money. By the next morning, her phone habits changed, face down everywhere, thumb hovering over the delete button anytime I got close. She started using speaker less, earphones more. I noticed. I didn't say a thing. See, Mallory had this weaponized version of normal. Smiles sharpened to cut suspicion. The more she felt the walls tighten, the more she played the part of the overworked bride-to-be. But beneath the Pinterest boards and the hand-calligraphed menu cards, something twitched. At the final catering review, 3 weeks of back and forth over fish versus duck, she slammed her tasting fork down so hard the sommelier jumped. "Why are you watching me like a detective?" There it was. The crack. I looked at her and gave the calmest, most infuriating smile I could muster. "I'm just trying to make sure everything's perfect." That made her blink. Once, twice, then she stood up and said she needed to check the florist's timings, didn't come back for 20 minutes. When she did, she was all sugar again, but I had the taste of blood in my mouth now. That night, I logged into our joint wedding planner app. She didn't know I still had access. She thought I gave it up after the great napkin ring debate of month 2. I reviewed the seating chart. Greg and Jennifer? Originally buried near the back, close to the speakers and the drunk uncle section. I moved them 2 tables up, then again, until they were right beside Mallory's side of the head table. Close enough for eye contact, close enough for tension. Strategic placement is everything. She'd see them the moment she walked down the aisle, Jennifer in particular. A wild card she hadn't accounted for. Mallory was playing checkers. I was playing interior design chess. She didn't notice, not right away. She was too busy texting under blankets, taking late walks to decompress, and having sudden emergencies that took her out of the house for hours. She even asked, casually, if I thought maybe we should scale the guest list back. "Why?" I asked. "Oh, budget, simplicity, just intimacy." I let her talk, let her wrap herself in the illusion that she was still steering the ship. But the wind had changed, and every RSVP was another nail in the stage I was building, where her ghost could come waltzing in wearing formal wear and fake smiles. She thought this was a wedding. I was starting to see it as theater, and every actor was in place. The rehearsal dinner was at a rustic little vineyard Mallory insisted on. String lights, acoustic covers of pop songs. Those chairs everyone pretends are charming, but actually make your spine scream. She floated through it like a woman living in her own Instagram story. Radiant, yes, but too radiant. Glowing like a bulb on the edge of burnout. She was in her element, laughing too loudly, complimenting people's outfits with a rehearsed sparkle in her voice, touching everyone just a second longer than needed. But her eyes kept drifting, specifically to Greg. He and Jennifer sat 3 tables down, sipping Chardonnay with the practiced politeness of a couple that no longer fights in public. Jennifer wore a subtle shade of red, bold enough to say, "I'm not invisible," but modest enough to still fit in a church brochure. Smart woman. Mallory clinked her glass for attention, stood up, dress clinging just so, face flushed with wine and pride. She gave a little speech about love, growth, commitment, the usual cliches strung together like pearls. Then she said it, "To love that survives the years," and her eyes flicked, just for a breath of a second, toward Greg. It was quick, most people wouldn't have noticed, but Jennifer did. I saw it from across the room, how her fingers tensed on the stem of her glass, how the corner of her mouth tightened like a noose. Her husband didn't notice, or pretended not to. Mallory didn't notice either, or hoped no one would. Toast ended. People clapped. Someone made a joke about who cried first, but the air had shifted, and I wasn't the only one breathing it. Later that night, I went outside for some air. The hallway near the tasting room was dim and smelled like cedar and expensive tension. That's when I heard it, Jennifer's voice. Quiet, sharp. "Why did she call you at 1 a.m. last week, Greg?" His reply wasn't audible at first, just the sound of a man caught between guilt and panic. Then came the fatal stutter. I don't know, it was nothing. She was just nervous about the wedding. She wanted advice. Advice from her ex at 1 a.m. My shoes made a polite sound against the hardwood as I walked around the corner. They both turned. Jennifer's eyes widened for a second. Greg looked like he wanted the earth to swallow him, but even the dirt has standards. "Everything okay?" I asked, tone casual as a cigarette. Jennifer gave me a smile so tight it could have cracked her molars. Just old friends catching up, right? I smiled back. Of course. Though sometimes old things aren't meant to be carried into new homes. Greg looked like he'd just realized the ring he was wearing was actually a handcuff. Jennifer tilted her head, processing. I walked away before either of them could say more, left the words lingering like the scent of burnt toast, something charred, something ruined. Back in the main room, Mallory was spinning in a circle with her bridesmaids, barefoot already, champagne glass, dangerously close to sloshing onto her overpriced dress. She didn't know what just cracked open outside those walls, but Jennifer did. And the way she re-entered the room, arm gently but deliberately removed from Greg's, eyes locked onto Mallory like a predator who's finally realized where the meat is, I knew she wouldn't stay quiet forever. And that was perfect. Because I didn't want to be the only one who saw the dirt under the wedding cake. It wasn't premeditated. I didn't have a whole internal monologue about it. No stormy music playing in my head. Just one of those quiet moments. Her phone buzzing on the nightstand while she was in the shower, and me sitting there staring at it like it had grown teeth. I picked it up. Face ID still worked. That surprised me. Either she'd forgotten I was still her trusted face, or she never thought I'd look. Neither option was flattering. The Messages app was clean, predictably so. Too clean, like a hotel room that smells faintly of bleach but still makes your skin crawl. But when I opened her Instagram DMs, it hit me. Greg. A whole thread, not recent, not explosive, worse. Casual, familiar, like they'd never really stopped. Jokes about songs only they knew, screenshots of old photos, references I didn't recognize because they were from a time I never belonged to. A different language built on shared memories and bad decisions. And then the pictures. Not nudes, nothing obvious, but close. Selfies with bedroom lighting, tongue between teeth. That look she used to give me before she said, "Are you coming to bed? Or are you married to that laptop now?" Except these weren't for me. She'd sent him a photo of her in the wedding dress fitting room mirror. I had never even seen that one, captioned, "Not bad for almost 30, right?" He'd replied, "You'd look better without it." Then another message, weeks ago, "Wish I could kiss you again. Just once." Her reply, "Just once, liar." No shock, no tears. Just that slow, cold burn in your chest when you realize the foundation wasn't cracked. It was hollow. I scrolled, further back. He'd sent her a video from a concert they'd gone to in college. She replied, "Still gives me chills. Miss those nights." I closed the app, sat there for a minute staring at nothing. The bathroom fan still hummed. She was probably exfoliating or whatever ritual she did before pretending everything was fine. I didn't confront her. What was I going to say? Caught you. And then what? Let her cry, lie, gaslight, offer some thin gruel about how it was just old feelings, I'd never act on them? No, I'd already seen enough performances. So I picked one photo, the dress-fitting mirror selfie, the one she sent him and never sent me, and I forwarded it to a secure off-cloud folder I keep for client data, encrypted, private, untraceable, a habit from my consulting days. Mallory walked out of the bathroom 10 minutes later, wrapped in a towel, humming. She smiled, kissed my cheek, and said, "You okay? You look serious." I smiled back. "Just thinking." She giggled. "Don't think too much. You'll ruin your own wedding." I nodded. Wouldn't want that. She got into bed, turned away. Her breathing slowed quickly, like she could sleep through anything. I stayed awake a while longer, staring at the ceiling, retracing 1,000 micro moments I'd misread. The way she hesitated before calling me the one, how she kept saying Greg just gets me in a weird way. The time she defended emotional cheating by calling it just human curiosity. I used to think love was about trust. Now I know it's about observation. And I had everything I needed, not for a confrontation, for a controlled detonation. Mallory always prided herself on reading people. She said it like a gift, some supernatural insight she possessed that allowed her to predict moods, motivations, lies. She said she could always tell when someone was holding something back. Apparently not this time. She noticed it the morning after I found the messages, the subtle recalibration in my tone, the way I looked at her without warmth but without anger either. Just an assessment, like I was measuring her for the box she was building around herself. She walked into the kitchen, barefoot, humming some tune she probably played with Greg once. I didn't flinch, just poured my coffee, added the creamer she liked, placed it in front of her. Her brow furrowed. "You're being sweet." I nodded. "It's your wedding week. You should enjoy it." Her eyes sharpened a fraction. "That's the thing about liars. They're more paranoid than the people they deceive. They live in constant fear of the mirror tilting back on them." "You're okay?" she asked softly. "Of course." I smiled. "You?" She stared a second too long, then kissed me like she was trying to figure out if I still tasted like a man in love. I let her. She pulled back, smiled like she'd won something, and padded off to start her day. But the temperature had dropped between us, and she felt it. The next day, I caught her on the couch, with her phone in her lap, face tense, scrolling hard. She thought I wasn't paying attention. She was wrong. I walked behind her casually. She tilted the screen away, instinctively. People only do that when their conscience is louder than their excuses. That night, while she thought I was asleep, she deleted the thread with Greg. The whole thing. Gone. Like it never existed, except it already lived in 3 secure places. Duplicated, time-stamped, archived, like a legacy she didn't know she'd authored. I woke up the next morning to find her unusually affectionate. She brought me breakfast in bed. Eggs, bacon, a stupid little flower in a tiny cup of water. Something she saw on Pinterest, probably. "Big week," she said, sitting beside me, brushing non-existent crumbs off my chest. "I can't believe it's almost here." I smiled at her like a man might smile at a painting of a house he no longer owned. She kissed my forehead. "You sure everything's okay?" I nodded. "Everything's finally settling." She went off to meet the florist. I went to my contacts. Jennifer. We hadn't spoken since the hallway moment, but her silence wasn't indifference, it was suspense. I texted her, "Do you have a moment to talk before the ceremony?" I watched the 3 dots blink like a heartbeat. Then the reply, "Absolutely. Name the time." I stared at that message for a while. It wasn't a maybe, it wasn't a let's see. It was a woman who had crossed the line from suspicion into action. I picked a quiet corner of the church grounds, back courtyard, ivy-covered brick, neutral ground. Mallory still had no idea she was busy posing with her bridesmaids for candid shots that weren't candid, laughing with her mouth too open, posting filtered countdowns to a wedding she thought was still hers. She wore white like armor, but she had no idea what color truth came in, no clue that someone else had stepped into the role of ally, not Greg, his wife, Jennifer, and we weren't enemies. We were witnesses, and we were preparing our testimony. The courtyard behind the church looked like something out of a wedding magazine. Ivy creeping along red brick, a wrought iron bench older than anyone alive, and sunlight that filtered through stained glass windows like it had been told to behave. Jennifer stood there waiting, arms folded, purse clutched tight to her side like it might hold more than just lipstick and tissues. She was dressed simple, tasteful, minimal makeup, the kind of woman who didn't need to scream to be heard. Her eyes, though, those screamed enough. I walked up, handed her my phone without a word, opened to the thread. She took it slowly, like it might burn. At first, just confusion, her brows knit together, fingers hesitating. Then she started scrolling. Silence. The silence didn't last. "She called him her soulmate," Jennifer whispered. Not cried, not shouted. Whispered, like the word was too pathetic to be said at full volume. I didn't respond, didn't need to. The word was offensive enough on its own. "She told me she hadn't spoken to him in years," Jennifer said, eyes fixed on the distance like she was watching her entire marriage projected on the church wall. "She said they ended things clean, said he was a child." She looked back at me. "Guess he still is." I sat on the bench, calm. "You still going through with it?" she asked. I smiled, tight, almost polite. "You'll see." Her mouth twitched, not quite a smile, not quite forgiveness either. Jennifer stood there for a moment longer, like she was calibrating herself. Then she nodded, slow and deliberate. "Then I'll be ready. No plan needed, no bullet points. Just shared knowledge and a mutual understanding that whatever happened at that altar would not be forgotten over cake." She handed the phone back and walked away without a goodbye. That told me everything I needed to know. I sat there a while longer, letting the sun do its filtered little dance. letting the moment breathe. In the distance, I could hear Mallory laughing with someone. Probably one of her cousins who still thought I was some wide-eyed lucky idiot who landed the hottest girl in her college sorority. That's the problem with appearances. You start believing your own brochure. Mallory thought she had two men still orbiting her, one safely tucked into the past and one eagerly waiting at the altar. What she didn't realize was that those orbits were about to collide, and the blast radius would be floral-scented in slow motion, exactly how she liked it. Except this time, she wouldn't be the one glowing. She'd be the one explaining. And Jennifer would be right there beside me, not as backup, as a mirror, one the whole room would be forced to look into. The day arrived like a polished lie, sunlight too perfect, flowers arranged like they hadn't wilted under weeks of deceit, everyone dressed like they believed in forever. I stood at the front of the church, bow tie tight, smile tighter. Guests trickled in with that half-whispered reverence people carry at weddings, all perfume and good intentions. Cameras flashed, babies cried, someone dropped a phone. Then I saw them. Greg walked in, posture stiff, suit too sharp for someone that spineless. On his arm, Jennifer, grace in motion, red lips set in something between elegance and execution. Mallory saw them at the same time. Her hand in mine went cold. I didn't say anything, just watched the gears jam behind her eyes. She leaned in, voice low and sharp. "Why didn't you tell me she was coming?" I turned my head slightly, still smiling for the room. "You never said she couldn't." She blinked. No comeback, just breath catching like a splinter in her throat. Jennifer caught Mallory's gaze, held it, no smile, no malice, just that brutal kind of composure you only earn after being lied to by someone who said they'd never be that kind of person. They took their seats. Row 2. Close enough to see every bead of sweat on Mallory's upper lip. Close enough for truth to sting. The music started. That soft, syrupy piano piece Mallory swore she'd dreamed of since middle school. Everyone stood. She walked in like a woman trying to remember where to place her feet, smiled for the crowd, but her eyes kept searching, darting to Jennifer, then back to me, like she wasn't sure which one of us had the knife, only that it was out. The officiant cleared his throat, warm smile, clipboard in hand. "Dearly beloved." Mallory's fingers found mine again, clutching harder now, like she could squeeze control back into the moment. I turned to her, kissed her cheek. "You look beautiful," I whispered. Her smile flickered, just enough for me to see the fracture line forming beneath the makeup, because that's the thing about Mallory. She could lie with words, with gestures, with entire choreographed performances, but she never could lie with her eyes. And right now, they were screaming. The officiant kept reading. Something about sacred vows, eternal commitment, the joining of souls. But the room? The room had changed. It was no longer a place of celebration. It was a stage, everyone in their places. Greg sat frozen like a man who just realized he wasn't a guest. He was evidence. Jennifer, still and silent, eyes locked on the woman who once called her husband at 1 a.m. to say, "I just needed to hear your voice." And me, I was calm. Cold, maybe, but calm. Not because I'd won, because I didn't need to fight. Mallory had already handed me every weapon. All I did was choose when to open the curtain. And now, it was almost time. We stood at the altar, side by side, like mannequins propped in a department store window. Perfect posture, coordinated outfits, fake lighting. 1,000 whispered expectations pressed in from every pew. The scent of white roses was thick, cloying. I could feel it in the back of my throat. The officiant smiled like a man who'd done this 100 times and still believed in it. Poor bastard. He nodded for us to begin. Mallory started first. Her hands trembled just slightly. Only someone watching for it would notice, but I was. Every micro-expression, every breath. "I promise to love you," she began, voice smooth at first, practiced, polished, "to support you, to grow with you." A pause. She glanced at Greg, a flicker so fast you'd miss it unless you expected it. And Jennifer did. I could see Jennifer 2 rows down, spine straight, one hand resting on her lap like it was coiled around a silent buzzer. Her eyes tracked Mallory with surgical precision. Mallory swallowed, blinked, pushed forward. "To be your partner, to share your burdens, and I vow to always," her voice cracked. She recovered. "To always be honest with you." It was subtle, but not to us, not to me, and definitely not to Jennifer. Jennifer smiled, just slightly. No teeth, just the lift of a lip that says, there it is, a courtroom smirk. Mallory's breath caught, a second too long. And the room, that perfectly decorated, overly expensive room, shifted. It was no longer a wedding. It was a crime scene dressed in peonies. I took my turn, read my vows, word for word, calm, clear, committed. She watched me the entire time, eyes flicking like she was trying to detect sarcasm, but I gave her none. Just sincerity, clean, uncluttered. I wanted every guest in that room to believe, at least until the next line. Then the officiant took a breath. His tone lifted like a crescendo before the cut. If anyone here objects to this union, speak now or forever hold your peace. And just like that, we reached the drop. I turned, looked at the crowd. Silence, everyone holding their breath, the way you do when a balloon is about to pop and you're not sure who's holding the pin. And then two hands. Jennifer's went up like a guillotine blade, and mine followed. Gasps, soft at first, then louder. A wave of confusion rippling down the rows. The videographer froze mid-zoom. Someone in the back muttered, Jesus Christ. A woman near the aisle clutched her pearls like she'd just walked in on an affair. Mallory spun to face me, panic crawling up her face like heat rising off asphalt. What are you doing? She whispered, voice cracking. The officiant blinked. This is unexpected. If there are objections, they should be stated clearly for the record. Jennifer stepped forward. Her heels clicked against the stone aisle like a slow, deliberate clock. She didn't look at Greg. She looked straight at Mallory. I object, she said, voice steady, on the grounds that the bride has been carrying on an emotional affair with my husband. Gasps turned to stunned silence. Mallory stammered, this isn't what you think. Then I spoke, calm, crisp. I object, I said, on the grounds that trust is not a decorative item, and lies don't make good wedding gifts. I could feel the heat rising in Mallory's chest just from standing next to her. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again, a fish gasping in a burning chapel. Greg looked like he wanted to crawl into the nearest baptismal font and drown quietly. The officiant, poor man, took a full step back. Mallory reached for my hand. I didn't move. She looked at me like I'd just flipped a table she didn't even realize she'd been eating off of. And I did it all without yelling. No accusations, no tantrums. Just two hands, raised, together. And the future we were supposed to step into together, it shattered right there beneath the flowers and the string quartet playing the world's most ironically timed rendition of Can't Help Falling in Love. The room didn't breathe, not at first. There's a kind of silence that doesn't just fill space, it chokes it, the kind that makes people glance at each other, not for comfort, but for permission to react. Gasps still echoed faintly, like ripples after a dropped stone. And Mallory, she stood there with her perfect hair, perfect makeup, perfect dress, none of which could hide the fact that she had just been publicly undressed in the only way that really matters, by truth. She looked at me first, eyes wild, voice caught somewhere between confusion and command. Then she turned to Jennifer, the weight of realization dragging her whole face downward like a collapsing mask. Jennifer didn't flinch. She raised my phone. One tap, the screen lit up. She turned it outward, slow and deliberate, so the guests in the front rows could see the messages. Just a few, no context required. A photo of Mallory in the wedding dress fitting room. Caption, not bad for almost 30, right? Greg's reply, you'd look better without it. Another message, Mallory, just once, liar. Greg, wish I could kiss you again. A final message, weeks later, Mallory, if things had gone differently, maybe it would be you up there. Jennifer's voice cut cleanly through the tension. I thought we should all hear the truth before the cake. Someone in the audience actually laughed, a short, startled bark that immediately turned into a cough. A few guests tried to look away. Others leaned forward, fascinated. Greg had collapsed into his chair like a balloon with a knife in it. Eyes to the floor, shoulders caved in, a man realizing he wasn't just caught, he was irrelevant. Mallory was shaking now. Her voice stumbled out, uneven. This isn't what it looks like. I didn't let her finish. It is, I said quietly. And it's enough. The officiant, to his credit, didn't try to salvage the moment. He just took one step back like he'd accidentally wandered into someone else's house fire. Mallory stepped forward, her fingers reaching slightly as if physical proximity might mend digital betrayal. Please, she whispered. We can talk. Just not here. I stared at her. Talk? Now? After months of erasing messages, of hiding smiles meant for someone else, of standing in front of me like I was Plan B she could Photoshop into permanence. I stepped off the altar. The click of my shoes echoed down the aisle louder than any of her excuses ever would. You wanted the past at our future's door, I said. You brought it in. I just opened it. Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. Because what do you say to that? What apology covers premeditated nostalgia dressed as commitment? Jennifer walked up beside me, calm as ever. Let's go, she said, not to me, to herself. And we did. No yelling, no courtroom drama, just two people exiting a performance they never agreed to star in. Behind us, Mallory stood frozen in front of her family, her friends, the rented flowers, and the expensive harpist now playing something tragic and off-tempo. She looked like a woman trying to figure out how the house she built burned down before the ceremony ended. But I didn't look back. Why would I? I already knew what was behind me, and it didn't look like love. I didn't run, didn't scream, didn't flip a table or give a speech. That would have been her move. Something performative, dramatic, designed to turn pain into spotlight. Instead, I stood still. Let the whispers multiply like insects. Let the stunned guests twist in their seats, unsure whether to stay, leave, or clap out of pure social reflex. Some watched me like I was a villain. Some watched her like they'd just seen a car crash wearing a veil. Mallory sat alone now, mouth slightly open, hands still clutching the bouquet like it could anchor her to a reality she no longer understood. She looked like a woman caught in a freeze frame, shattered, but somehow still expecting the next cue. It never came. I walked out slowly, no hurry, every step echoing against the marble aisle, past the decorative floral arch she obsessed over for 6 weeks, past the photographer who instinctively lowered his camera. Out the front doors, into the fall air. Jennifer followed. She didn't say a word, just walked beside me until we hit the parking lot, heels tapping like punctuation marks on the final page. At the curb, we stopped. We looked at each other. No hug, no handshake, just a quiet nod, not thank you, not I'm sorry, just we saw it through. And then we walked in different directions. Later that night, after the echo of the afternoon had settled into something still, my phone lit up. Jennifer, he's packing his things. Thank you. I stared at the message for a while, not out of hesitation, just stillness. Then I locked the screen and set the phone face down. Never replied. What was there to say? She handled her house. I had already burned mine to the foundation. Mallory tried to reach out in the days that followed. First subtle, a shared calendar reminder that we still have the deposit. Then bolder, we need closure. You didn't even let me explain. Can we just talk? But I wasn't interested in patching holes in a ship she'd been drilling from below. 3 months later, I got married. No chapel, no rented violins, just me, a courthouse, 2 witnesses, and a woman who never once used the word soulmate as currency for manipulation. There was no photographer, no champagne tower, no lingering glances toward the past, and absolutely, unequivocally, no exes. Sometimes the loudest revenge is silence. Sometimes the best ending is no ending at all. Just a door quietly closing behind you while you walk freely into whatever comes next.